Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku Felt Betrayed and Became the Most Superior Hero Above All Part 2. Before we start, please go support Old Spice 345 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Deku is a male. The Return and the Confrontation. The ninth day dawned with a tense atmosphere, heralding Izuku Midoriya's return to UA after a week of training and reflection under the tutelage of Oliver Queen. As the sun slowly rose, illuminating the streets of Muzurifu, Izuku knew that today would be a crucial day. Not just because of the return itself, but because of what it meant to face his classmates again, and, more importantly, his teacher, Shota Aizawa. Izuku, after bidding farewell to Oliver in the morning, headed towards UA with a mix of determination and anxiety. The days of training with Oliver had made him stronger, but he also knew that the consequences of his absence would not be easy to handle. As he walked towards the academy, his mind was occupied with thoughts of what would come next. Before heading to the classroom, Izuku decided to head back to the dorms first. His clothes were dirty and worn from the week's rigorous training, and he knew he couldn't possibly present himself to his classmates and teachers in that state. Arriving at his room, he headed straight for the shower, letting the hot water wash away not only the dirt from his body, but also the tension built up in his mind. This is the time. I can't keep avoiding everyone. I have to face what's coming, even if it's hard, he said to himself. After his shower, Izuku put on his UA uniform, feeling a mix of nostalgia and determination as he did so. He stared at his reflection in the mirror for a moment, noticing the small scars and bruises left over from his training. But more than the physical marks, what really stood out was the look in his eyes, a mix of resolve and a shadow of what he had been through during that week. With his uniform clean and his mind clearer, Izuku left the dorms and headed to the classroom. He knew that when he got there, questions would be waiting for him, and there was no way to avoid them. As he walked through the doors of the academy, he noticed some of his classmates watching him from a distance, their gazes filled with concern and curiosity. Arriving at the entrance of the classroom, Izuku found Aizawa waiting, as if he already knew Izuku was coming. The teacher's expression was inscrutable, his eyes serious and piercing. "Midoriya, you've finally decided to come back." Aizawa's tone was cold, but not hostile. Rather, it was the voice of a teacher who had been worried and was now waiting for explanations. "I'm sorry, Aizawa-sensei. I know my absence was sudden and I caused some worry, but I needed that time to find answers and prepare myself. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was something I had to do." Aizawa watched Izuku in silence for a moment, assessing his words and behavior. There was something different about the young man, a maturity he hadn't seen before, but also a shadow of what had happened during that week. "Your absence didn't go unnoticed, Midoriya. We were all worried about you, especially after what happened with your mother and All Might's disappearance. But what worries me most is how you've handled all of this. You've been away from your teammates, from your responsibilities, and that's not like you." Izuku nodded, accepting Aizawa's criticism. He knew his teacher was right, but he also knew that what he had done was necessary for his personal growth. "I know, sensei. And I have no excuses for that. But I needed time to face my own demons, to understand what it really means to be a hero, and to learn to trust myself and others again." Aizawa kept his gaze fixed on Izuku, searching for any hint of doubt or falsehood, but he found none of that. Instead, he saw a young man who had gone through a significant transformation, someone who had faced pain and uncertainty, and had come out stronger on the other side. "I understand that we all face our struggles in different ways, Midoriya. But you can't let those struggles keep you from those who trust you. That's something you'll have to learn to handle, because being a hero doesn't mean facing everything alone. It means knowing when to ask for help, when to trust your comrades." Izuku lowered his head for a moment, feeling the weight of Aizawa's words. He had learned that lesson with Oliver, but now it was time to apply it in real life, to show his teammates that he was ready to be part of their team again. "I understand, sensei. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to regain that trust, to prove that I can be the hero everyone expects me to be." Aizawa nodded, seeing the sincerity in Izuku's eyes. "All right. But this won't be easy, Midoriya. Your classmates have questions, and you'll have to face them. But I'm sure that if you're honest with them, they'll be able to understand what you've been through. Now, go to the living room. It's time for you to talk to them. Izuku nodded, knowing the next step would be to face his classmates, those who had been worried and confused by his absence. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for what he knew would be a difficult but necessary conversation. Entering the classroom, Izuku felt all eyes on him. The atmosphere was tense, filled with unasked questions. Katsuki Bakugo was the first to speak, his tone filled with the usual harshness. So, Deku, where the hell have you been? Izuku paused for a moment, shifting his gaze to the rest of his classmates. He knew Bakugo had a right to ask, but he wasn't ready to give a direct answer at the moment. He felt like before he addressed that question, there was something else he needed to say. Izuku, that's none of your business, Katsuki. Izuku's evasive answer made the atmosphere in the room even more tense. Bakugo frowned, clearly annoyed by the lack of a direct answer, but before he could say anything else, Ochiko Uraraka, who had been silently watching, decided to intervene. Deku-kun, we were all worried about you. We didn't know if you were okay, if you needed help. Izuku turned to her, and for a moment, the tension in his gaze grew even more intense. There was something about the way she spoke, the way she feigned concern, that made him uncomfortable. Remembering the betrayal he had witnessed days ago, he felt a surge of anger mixed with disdain. You have no right to ask me anything. Izuku's words fell like a bucket of cold water on the classroom. His classmates were stunned, not understanding why Izuku would speak like that to Uraraka, who had always been a close friend. But only Izuku knew the truth behind those words, the truth about the betrayal he had seen. The silence in the room grew even heavier. Uraraka, or rather, the clone of Himiko Toga that took her form, tried to maintain the facade of concern, but something about the intensity of Izuku's words made her back off, adopting an expression of feigned surprise. Tenya Iida, always the class representative, stepped forward, trying to calm the situation. Midoriya-kun, we understand that you've been dealing with a lot, but as your classmates, we're here to support you. You don't have to carry it all alone. That's the most important lesson we've learned here at UA. Izuku looked at Iida, feeling a mix of gratitude and guilt. He knew Iida was right, and that his comrades were genuinely worried about him, but the shadow of Uraraka's betrayal still weighed on his mind. I know, Iida. And I appreciate that you're here to support me. It's just that things haven't been easy, and I'm still dealing with a lot of emotions. I promise I won't walk away like that again. But I need you all to understand that I'm not ready to talk about everything that happened just yet. Iida nodded, showing his understanding, but also his firmness. We understand, Midoriya-kun. But don't forget that we're here for you, and you can always count on us. The atmosphere in the room began to soften, and although there were still unanswered questions and tensions to be resolved, the first step towards reconciliation had been taken. Izuku knew it wouldn't be easy, but he also knew he had the strength, determination, and support from those he could trust to keep going. Izuku took a seat at his desk, letting the tension in his shoulders relax a little. He knew the day had just begun and there were still many difficult conversations to be had, but he also knew he had taken an important step by returning and facing his classmates. As Aizawa began giving instructions for the class, Izuku allowed himself a moment to reflect, knowing that the road ahead would not be easy. However, with the determination he had found in his training with Oliver and the support of his true friends, he was ready for whatever came next. Aizawa, watching Izuku as he spoke, kept his gaze serious, but deep inside he felt a slight satisfaction. He knew Izuku was dealing with a lot, but he also recognized something in him that would drive him to overcome any obstacle. Although he didn't show it, Aizawa had faith in Izuku, and although the worry for him was still present, he was confident that, given time, he would find his way. The cultural festival and the shadows of the past. The mood at UA was beginning to change. After days filled with tension and excitement, news of the upcoming cultural festival began to spread through the halls, bringing with it an air of anticipation and excitement. However, for Izuku Midoriya, those feelings were mixed with the confusion and uncertainty he had been facing since his return. The school day passed relatively normally. Aizawa had given the instructions for the day, keeping the class focused on their studies and training. Despite the apparent routine, Izuku could feel that something was changing in the air, as if a new stage was about to begin. However, he still couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows of days gone by were still stalking him. At the end of class, as everyone began to pack up their things, Tenya Iida approached Izuku, with the same formality and seriousness that always characterized him. "Midoriya-kun, do you have a moment? There's something I'd like to talk to you about." Izuku, still recovering from the intensity of the last few days, nodded, noticing the worry in his friend's eyes. "Sure, Iida. What's it about?" The two of them began walking together towards the dorms, away from the hustle and bustle of the classroom. As they made their way through the halls of UA, Iida began to speak, his tone serious but filled with restrained emotion. "The cultural festival is approaching, Midoriya-kun. Despite everything that has happened recently, the Academy has decided to go ahead with the plans. It is an important event, not only for the students, but for the community as well. A chance to show what we have learned, to prove that even in difficult times, we can come together and celebrate our skills and talents." Izuku listened silently, feeling a mix of emotions. The cultural festival had been an event he looked forward to in previous years, but now, with everything that had happened, it seemed almost trivial compared to the challenges he had faced. "I understand it's good that UA is continuing with the festival, but I'm not sure I'm ready for something like this. My mind is still occupied with everything that's happened." Iida nodded understandingly, knowing that Izuku's emotional wounds were still fresh. "It's understandable, Midoriya-kun. We've all been through difficult times, but I think this festival could be an opportunity for you to reconnect with us, with your classmates. It could be a moment of distraction, something positive in the midst of so much darkness." As they continued walking, Izuku felt the weight of Iida's words. There was something else he needed to tell him, something he had been holding back since his return. He knew he needed to share it with someone he trusted, and there was no one better to listen to than Iida. "Iida, there's something I need to tell you. Something that's been eating away at me inside." Iida paused, noticing the change in Izuku's tone. He turned to look directly at him, his expression reflecting the seriousness of the moment. "What is it about, Midoriya-kun?" Izuku took a deep breath, knowing that the words he was about to say would be painful, but also necessary. "It's about Uraraka. Something happened, something that changed everything. Before I disappeared for a week, I saw something that I can't forget. I saw her, with Bakugo. They were together, in a way I didn't expect. They did things I never thought I'd see. I felt betrayed, broken. That's why I walked away, that's why I haven't been able to look her in the eyes since." Izuku's words hung heavily in the air, and for a moment, the silence between the two was overwhelming. Iida, shocked and hurt by what he had just heard, tried to process the information. "Iida, Midoriya-kun, that's terrible. I can't imagine what you must have felt when you saw that. But are you sure? Are you sure that what you saw was real?" Izuku nodded, his face reflecting the anguish he still felt as he remembered that moment. "I saw it with my own eyes, Iida. And even though part of me still wants to believe there is an explanation, I can't ignore what I saw and heard. That's why I haven't been able to be close to her. That's why I've been avoiding her." Iida, always rational and looking for logic in situations, was silent for a moment, considering what Izuku had said. He remembered the difficult times he himself had faced, how Izuku had supported him when everything seemed dark for him. "Midoriya-kun, remember how you were there for me when I faced the situation with my brother, how you kept me from falling into the hands of the hero killer. You gave me the strength to keep going, to not give in to despair. And I know that what you saw with Uraraka and Bakugo was devastating, but we must be cautious before jumping to any definitive conclusions. Maybe there's something else we don't know, something that could explain what you saw." Izuku looked at Iida, knowing that his words made sense, but also feeling the confusion and pain that continued to torment him. He remembered how, in a moment of happiness, he had shared with Iida the news of his engagement to Uraraka, because he trusted him more than anyone else. Now, that trust seemed to have become a heavy burden. "Izuku, you're right, Iida, but I don't know if I'm ready to face her, to talk about this with her. I need time. This is all very confusing for me. Iida nodded, placing a comforting hand on Izuku's shoulder. Take all the time you need, Midoriya-kun. I'm here for you, and I know your true friends are too. You don't have to carry this alone, just like I didn't have to when you helped me. Izuku was grateful for Iida's words, feeling a small relief at having his burden shared. He knew there was still a long road ahead, but with the support of friends like Iida, perhaps he could find the strength to face what was coming. After his conversation with Iida, Izuku headed to the dorm's common room, looking for a place where he could be alone for a moment. However, upon arriving, he found himself confronted by the other members of the team that had participated in Bakugo's rescue: Eijiro Kirishima, Shoto Todoroki, and Momo Yaoyorozu. Upon seeing Izuku, the three of them exchanged glances before approaching him. Midoriya, I'm glad to see you back. We've all been worried about you. I know you've been through a lot, and I want you to know that we're here to support you. It's true. What happened with your mother, and then with All Might, we can't imagine what you're feeling, but we want you to know that you don't have to face it alone. We are with you, Midoriya-san. Not just as classmates, but as friends. If you need to talk, or if there is anything we can help you with, don't hesitate to say so. Izuku looked at his companions, feeling a mix of gratitude and guilt. He had been avoiding everyone, even those who had been with him through the toughest times. He knew he shouldn't keep everything to himself anymore, but he also knew it wasn't easy to open up, especially after what he had seen. Thanks, guys, I really appreciate it. It's just there's a lot I can't process yet. It's all been very confusing, and I don't know how to handle it all. But knowing that you're here, that I can count on you, means a lot to me. That's what friends do. We'll be here for you, no matter what. You don't have to carry this burden alone, Bro, Kirishima exclaimed, flexing his bicep. The important thing is that you remember that you are not alone. We have been through a lot together, and we will continue to do so. If you need time, we understand, but don't walk away from us. Todoroki narrated. Exactly. We're all here because we want to help you get through this, and because we believe in you, Midoriya-san. The class president said. Though the shadows of the past were still present, he knew that with them by his side, he had a solid support network that would help him face whatever came next. The conversation in the common room continued, but the mood had lightened a bit. Kirishima, Todoroki, and Momo tried to distract Izuku with stories and jokes, trying to make him forget, if only for a moment, the pain that had been consuming him. As they talked, Izuku couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and fear. Relief, because he knew he wasn't alone. Fear, because he also knew he would eventually have to face the hardest questions, both about what he had seen with Uraraka and about the consequences of his recent decisions. Hey, Midoriya, do you remember when we faced All for One? I thought we wouldn't get out of there alive, but thanks to you, we managed to overcome it. The redhead asked, remembering that experience. Yes, I remember it was a difficult time, but we were all strong together. And we will be again. Whatever you face, we will face together. That is what it means to be classmates, and more than that, friends. The bicolor seconded. Momo nodded, showing a warm and understanding smile. Exactly. You have supported us in our most difficult moments, and now it is our turn to return that support. Izuku smiled weakly, feeling that despite everything, there was hope. Maybe he couldn't solve all of his problems right away, but he knew he didn't have to do it alone. With his friends by his side, he felt like he could find a way to overcome the shadows surrounding him. The conversation continued for a while longer, until finally, it became clear that everyone needed to rest. Todoroki, Momo, and Kirishima said goodbye to Izuku, leaving him alone in the common room as they headed to their rooms. Izuku stood in the room for a while, reflecting on everything that had happened that day. He knew he had taken an important step by opening up to Iida and talking to his other classmates, but he also knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. There were still many unanswered questions, and the emotional wounds he carried with him would not heal overnight. Finally, as fatigue began to take hold, Izuku decided it was time to go to sleep. He knew the next day would bring new challenges, but he felt a little more prepared to face them. He stood up from his seat, turned off the lights in the common room, and headed to his room. That night, as Izuku prepared for sleep, the figure of Superior appeared in his mind again. This time, the internal battle was fiercer. Every time he tried to find the peace Oliver had taught him to seek, the figure hit him with doubts, with temptations of power, with promises of greatness if only he would stop resisting. Izuku found himself fighting with all his might, trying to keep his mind clear, but the figure of Superior was relentless, taking advantage of every moment of weakness, every shadow of doubt that still lingered in his heart. The battle escalated, turning into a whirlwind of emotions and internal conflicts. You know that if you let me take control, you can protect everyone. You won't have to fear anymore. You won't have to suffer anymore. No, I can't give in. I can't lose myself. In the distance, in the darkness of his subconscious, shadows silently watched the battle. They did not intervene, but their presence felt like a judgment. One of the shadows, more defined than the others, spoke in a solemn voice. Shadow, the test is getting closer and closer to ending. The other shadows nodded silently. Izuku, feeling like he was on the verge of defeat, found strength where he didn't know he had it. He remembered his friends, Iida, Oliver, all those who had trusted him, and he used that strength to resist, to stand firm against the temptations of the dark figure. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the figure stepped back, fading into the shadows with an enigmatic smile. We'll see you soon, Izuku. With those words, the figure disappeared, and peace finally returned to Izuku's mind. Exhausted from the intense internal battle, Izuku let himself fall back onto the bed, feeling sleep quickly overtake him. He knew the shadows were still lurking, but he also knew he wasn't alone. With that certainty, he allowed himself to rest, knowing that tomorrow would be a new day, and that he would be a little more prepared to face it. The proposal. The atmosphere at UA was filled with renewed energy as students began to focus on preparations for the cultural festival. Class 1A, despite having faced challenges that had left a deep mark on them, was determined to seize this opportunity to demonstrate their resilience. It was a bright morning, and although spring was beginning to show signs of its arrival, the air still carried the cool memory of winter. Izuku Midoriya walked to the classroom, his thoughts divided between the weight of recent events and the prospect of the festival. Although he was still not fully recovered from everything that had happened, he felt that the festival could be a necessary respite, a way to reconnect with everyday life and, perhaps, find some peace. Arriving at the classroom, she noticed Kyokujiro in the corner, looking through musical scores and making notes in a notebook. Ever since it had been decided that Class 1A would organize a band for the festival, Kyoka had taken the lead in the initiative. Despite her reserved nature, there was something about her that radiated a quiet confidence, a passion for music that was impossible to ignore. Kyoka has always been quiet, but her dedication to music is something I hadn't noticed before. Maybe this festival isn't just a way to distract ourselves, but an opportunity to discover new things about ourselves and about others. Determined to do something different, Izuku approached Kyoka, hoping to offer his help. Hello, Jiro. I've been thinking about the festival and well, I'd like to help you with the band. I think this could be something that brings us together as a class and also as friends. Kyoka looked up from her notes, her eyes reflecting slight surprise at Izuku's offer. Although she didn't know him as well as some of her classmates, she knew Izuku was someone she could trust, someone who always gave his best. Thanks, Midoriya. I could really use all the help I can get. There's a lot to do and not much time. Besides, I think this will be good for everyone. We need something positive to focus on. The conversation flowed naturally. Kyoka explained that, although the idea of the band had been well received, there were still many things that needed to be organized: the choice of songs, the distribution of instruments, and of course, the rehearsals. Izuku, always willing to help, offered to collaborate in whatever was needed, from moving equipment to helping coordinate his colleagues. I'm not very good at music, but I want to do what I can to make this a success. Besides, I think we all need something to focus on, something to make us forget a little about what's happened. Kyoka nodded, understanding the undertone of Izuku's words. She knew that everyone was dealing with their own demons, and that the cultural festival, if only for a moment, gave them something to think about, something positive to look forward to. I understand what you're saying, Midoriya. Music has always been my refuge, and I think it could be for all of us right now. If we work together, we can make this something special, something that really means something. The morning passed quickly, and before they knew it, the first class had ended. The students began to disperse, some heading to the cafeteria, others staying in the classroom to review their notes. However, Izuku and Kyoka decided to stay a little longer, fine-tuning the details of the preparations for the band. As they worked together, Izuku couldn't help but notice how meticulous and passionate Kyoka was when it came to music. Every detail mattered to her, from the choice of songs to the timing of the instruments. As the conversation progressed, Izuku felt a growing admiration for his partner, not only for her talent, but also for her dedication. Jiro really takes this seriously. It's not just a distraction for her, it's something she cares deeply about. It's inspiring to see someone so committed to what they love. I've been thinking about some songs we could play. I want them to be something that resonates with everyone, something that speaks to what we've been through, but also conveys hope. What do you think? Izuku pondered for a moment. Music wasn't exactly his forte, but he understood what Kyoka was trying to accomplish. I think that's perfect, Jiro. We all need a little hope right now. And if we can convey that through music, it will be something really special. I'm sure that, with your leadership, we'll achieve that. Kyoka smiled at the comment, feeling like she had a clear purpose for the first time in a long time. She knew that the responsibility of making the band work fell heavily on her shoulders, but with Izuku's help and the support of her fellow members, she was confident that they could do it. The rest of the day was spent between classes and small meetings to plan the band's rehearsals. As the hours passed, Izuku and Kyoka began to form a kind of complicity, a connection that went beyond music. They both shared the desire for the festival to be a success, not only for themselves, but for all their classmates. At the end of the day, when most of the students had already left, Izuku and Kyoka found themselves back in the music classroom, going over a few details before leaving. Tomorrow we'll start training. It won't be easy, but I'm sure that if we all do our part, we can make this work. I agree. It will be a challenge, but I'm ready to face it and I'm here to help you with whatever you need. Kyoka nodded, feeling a warm sense of camaraderie she hadn't experienced in a long time. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she also knew she wasn't alone on this journey. As they headed to their dormitories, Izuku and Kyoka continued to converse, talking not only about the festival, but also about their lives, their dreams, and their fears. As the night progressed, they both felt that perhaps this festival would not only be a way to show their strength as a class, but also a chance to strengthen the bonds that united them. And so, with the weight of responsibilities and the hope of a new beginning, Izuku and Kyoka said goodbye, knowing that the next day would be crucial to their plans. But what they didn't know was that this festival would also be the start of something deeper, something that would change their lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The first essay. The dawn of a new day brought with it a sense of renewal for the students of UA. Though the shadows of the past still loomed over them, the cultural festival was a chance to look forward. For Class 1A, the second day of preparation marked the start of something big, their first band rehearsal. Izuku woke up early that morning, feeling a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The previous day had been eye-opening in many ways, not only because of the connection he had begun to form with Kyoka, but also because he felt like he was slowly finding a way to channel his emotions through music. After a quick shower, Izuku got dressed and headed to the dining hall for breakfast. The atmosphere at UA was calm, but there was an underlying energy that indicated everyone was preparing for the day ahead. As he ate, Izuku noticed that Kyoka was already sitting at a nearby table, reviewing some notes, and drinking her tea with the same concentration she had shown the day before. Jiro is really taking this seriously. I should join her, and see how I can help before school starts, he said to himself. With that thought in mind, Izuku stood up and headed to Kyoka's table, who greeted him with a discreet smile upon noticing his presence. Good morning, Midoriya. Ready for today's rehearsal? Good morning, Jiro. Yes, I'm ready. Although I admit I'm a little nervous, I've never participated in something like this before. Kyoka nodded, understanding his feelings. She knew that for many of her classmates, music was uncharted territory, and that the process of learning to play an instrument, and coordinate with others would be a challenge. It's normal to feel that way, but don't worry. I'm sure that with a little practice, we can all catch up. The most important thing is to keep an open mind and be willing to learn. The conversation flowed naturally as the two continued to eat breakfast. As they talked, Kyoka explained to Izuku some details about the structure of the songs they had chosen, and how she planned to distribute the instruments among her companions. And how do you feel about that? It's a big responsibility to lead something like that. Kyoka paused for a moment, pondering the question. Although she had accepted the role of leader with confidence, she knew it wouldn't be easy. It's a challenge, for sure. But it's also exciting. Music has always been something personal for me, and being able to share it with all of you, well, it means a lot. I want this band to be something that brings us together, something that helps us find some peace in the midst of everything that's happened. Izuku nodded, feeling a deep respect for Kyoka and her passion. He knew that not everyone had the same level of commitment to the project, but he was determined to support Kyoka in any way he could. I'm sure we'll make it, Jiro. And even though we're not professional musicians, I know we can do something special. With breakfast finished, Izuku and Kyoka headed together to the classroom, where the other members of Class 1A were already beginning to arrive. The music classroom had been transformed into a makeshift studio, with instruments scattered throughout the room and amplifiers plugged into the walls. As the students took their places, Kyoka assumed her role as leader with ease, organizing her classmates and assigning them their instruments. Okay, guys. I know that many of you have no experience with music, but don't worry. Today will be a day of practice, and my goal is for everyone to feel comfortable with their instruments. It's not about being perfect, but about finding our rhythm and enjoying the process. The dark-haired girl finished telling the story with a happy tone. The first few minutes of rehearsal were, as expected, chaotic. The notes were out of tune, the rhythms were uncoordinated, and the students' expressions reflected the frustration of being in unfamiliar territory. But Kyoka, with admirable patience, guided each of her classmates, correcting mistakes and encouraging them to continue forward. Izuku, who had decided to help with the organization and sound, moved around, adjusting amplifiers, changing cables and making sure everything was in order. Even though he wasn't playing an instrument, he felt part of the process, helping everything run as smoothly as possible. This is harder than it looks, but it's also exciting to see how everyone is giving their best. Kyoka is really doing a great job. Those were the thoughts of our freckled friend. As the hours passed, the initial chaos began to transform into something more structured. Although there was still much room for improvement, the band was beginning to find its rhythm. The students, who had initially been nervous and bewildered, were beginning to relax and enjoy the music. Well done, guys. We are getting better, but there is still a lot to do. Remember, it is not just about playing the notes correctly, but about feeling the music. I want that, when we play at the festival, everyone feels what we are trying to convey," said the young rocker with great motivation. The rehearsal continued until noon, at which point Kyoka decided to give them a break. The students dispersed, some heading to the cafeteria, while others remained in the classroom to continue practicing on their own. Izuku, however, decided to stay and help Kyoka go over some technical details. As they worked together, the conversation drifted to more personal topics. "Jiro, how did you get into music? I mean, you've always been good with your quirk, but this is something else." Kyoka paused for a moment, thinking about how to respond. "Music has always been something very personal to me. My parents are musicians, and I grew up surrounded by instruments and sheet music. At first, I wasn't very interested, but over time, I discovered that music was a way to express myself, to say things I couldn't put into words. It's something that helps me understand myself and connect with others." "That's really cool. It's amazing how something like music can have so much power." Kyoka nodded, feeling a growing connection with Izuku. She knew he had been through a lot too, and though he didn't say it openly, she could see in his eyes that they shared a similar internal struggle. "And you, Midoriya? I know you've been through a lot lately. How are you holding up?" Izuku sighed, knowing the question was inevitable. But he also knew he could trust Kyoka, that she wouldn't judge him for what he felt. "It's been difficult. I don't really know if I'm dealing with everything in the best way. But being here, working on something with all of you, it helps me. It helps me stay focused on something positive, instead of getting carried away by everything that's happened. I'm glad to hear it. I think we all need something like that right now, something to keep us together, and remind us that, despite everything, we keep going. The conversation faded into a comfortable silence as they continued to work. Izuku felt like he was slowly finding a way to deal with his emotions, to channel them into something productive. And he knew that in large part, that was due to the connection he was forming with Kyoka. When they finally finished, they realized that time had flown by. The afternoon was already beginning to fall, and they both knew it was time to go back to their dorms to rest before the next practice. Thanks for your help, Midoriya. I don't know if I could handle all this without you. Izuku felt a little embarrassed by the compliment, but also grateful. You don't have to thank me. I'm happy to help. And thank you too. This means a lot to me. With a smile, they both said goodbye and headed to their respective dormitories. As he walked through the halls of UA, Izuku felt a strange mix of tiredness and satisfaction. He knew that the day had been long and tiring, but he also knew that he had taken an important step towards recovery. And so, with the promise of a new day and the certainty that he had something to focus on, Izuku prepared himself for what was to come, knowing that although the road was difficult, he was not alone. With friends like Kyoka by his side, he felt like he could face any challenge, and that the cultural festival would be a milestone in his healing process. Building harmony. The third day of preparation for the cultural festival began with an atmosphere of anticipation. Although the previous day's rehearsals had been challenging, Class 1A had begun to find their groove, and the positive energy that had arisen among the students was palpable. However, both Izuku and Kyoka knew that the real work was only just beginning. Izuku woke up that morning feeling the effects of the intense rehearsal the day before. His muscles were tense, and his body reminded him that even though he hadn't been directly involved in the music, he had been working non-stop to make sure everything worked out just right. However, physical fatigue couldn't extinguish the spark of motivation he felt inside. After getting dressed and having breakfast, Izuku headed to the classroom, where Kyoka was already waiting, checking sheet music and adjusting the amplifiers with unwavering concentration. Jiro is giving this his all. I want to make sure my effort lives up to his. As Izuku entered the classroom, Kyoka looked up and gave him a smile. Although their interactions were still a bit formal, there was a growing sense of camaraderie between them that became more apparent with each passing day. Good morning, Midoriya. How are you feeling after yesterday? A little tired, but ready to go. How are you? It seems like you haven't stopped working since I arrived. Kyoka shrugged, a gesture that mixed modesty with determination. It's a big project, but it's worth it. Plus, working on this helps me stay focused. There's something about music that gives me peace, even in the most stressful times. I understand what you mean. I think we all need something to keep us balanced, especially now. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the other students, who filled the room with their voices and laughter. The band began to prepare for the second rehearsal, adjusting instruments and tuning strings. There was an atmosphere of camaraderie that, although light, was enough to keep them united in their common goal. Okay, guys. Today we're going to focus on timing. I want everyone to pay attention to how their parts fit with everyone else's. The key to a good band is for everyone to be on the same page, both in rhythm and spirit, the young heroine said simply. With clear instructions, the students began to play, and although there was a marked improvement from the day before, there was still much work to be done. Kyoka walked among them, listening intently, correcting mistakes and offering words of encouragement. Meanwhile, Izuku was in charge of monitoring the sound and making sure the levels were adequate. Even though he wasn't playing an instrument, his role was crucial, and he felt deeply involved in the process. This isn't just music. It's a way of building something together, of finding a little harmony in the midst of chaos. As the rehearsal progressed, the band began to find their sync. The students, who were initially bewildered by the complexity of the music, were beginning to feel more comfortable with their instruments. Kyoka, watching the progress, couldn't help but feel proud of what they were accomplishing. That's it, guys. We're getting better. Remember, The key is to listen to others and adapt. If we keep going like this, we'll arrive at the festival with a performance we can be proud of. The purple-haired girl excitedly motivated her companions. Rehearsal continued throughout the morning, and although there were moments of frustration and mistakes, the band persevered. At the end of the session, Quirk decided to give them a break so they could regain their energy before continuing. During the break, Izuku and Quirk retreated to a corner of the classroom, where they began discussing some adjustments they could make to further improve the performance. The conversation soon turned to more personal topics, as it had the day before. Midoriya, I've noticed that despite everything that's happened, you're still showing a positive attitude. It's admirable, but are you sure you're okay? I know it's not easy to deal with all of this. Thank you, Jiro. The truth is that it's not always easy, and there are days when I struggle to find that positive attitude. But working on this, with all of you, gives me purpose. It's a way to keep myself focused on something positive, instead of getting carried away by the negative. Quirk nodded, fully understanding what Izuku meant. She knew that everyone had their own internal struggles, but she also knew that this project was helping everyone stay together. I'm glad to hear that. I think we're all looking for the same thing, a way to move forward. And while music won't solve all of our problems, it at least gives us something to focus our energies on. Yes, you're right. And I want you to know that I'm here for you, Jiro. This festival is important to everyone, but I know it's important to you too. I want to help you make it a success. The conversation stopped when one of their classmates called them back to rehearsal. Quirk and Izuku stood up and returned to their places, ready to continue with the work. However, they both knew that they had taken an important step in their relationship, strengthening the bond of trust that had begun to form between them. The rest of the rehearsal went by relatively calmly. The students, though tired, were encouraged by the progress they had made. As the day progressed, the band began to sound more cohesive, and though there was still work to be done, the direction they were moving in was clear. We are achieving something here. This is more than just a performance, it's a way to show that we keep fighting, that we don't give up. Those were the green-haired boy's thoughts. Finally, Quirk decided to end the rehearsal, thanking everyone for their effort and dedication. As the students began to gather their things and leave the classroom, Quirk approached Izuku, her expression reflecting a mix of tiredness and satisfaction. Thanks for all your work today, Midoriya. I really appreciate your help. You don't have to thank me, Jiro. I'm happy to help. And I think we're all starting to see what we can accomplish if we keep this up. With a knowing smile, they both said goodbye and headed to their bedrooms to rest. The fatigue of the day was beginning to take its toll on Izuku, but he knew the effort was worth it. With each passing day, he felt like he was getting a little closer to the peace he longed for. However, that night, as Izuku prepared to sleep, the tranquility he had managed to find during the day was interrupted. As he closed his eyes, the figure of Superior had begun to haunt him in his mind. Izuku found himself once again in the vast, desolate landscape of his subconscious, facing the shadow that represented his deepest doubts and fears. This time, the figure was more imposing, more menacing, and it wasn't about to leave him alone. You keep resisting, Midoriya? But you know you can't escape me. I'm a part of you, the part that will give you the power you need. I don't need that kind of power. What I need is to find peace, not more chaos. Peace will not lead you to greatness. Only power will. Only by yielding to me will you be able to overcome what awaits you. The internal battle that followed was fierce. Izuku fought with all his might to resist the figure's temptations, but every time he tried to find the peace Oliver had taught him to seek, the figure struck him with doubts, with temptations of power, with promises of greatness. As the battle raged on, far away in the shadows of Izuku's subconscious, shadows watched silently. These shadows, more ethereal and mysterious, seemed to be witnesses to the young hero's internal struggle. Shadow 1, that counterpart of yours is really persistent, maybe it's time to talk to him. Shadow 2, not yet, I feel that we must find out more about this new manifestation of power. We must prepare for whatever is coming. Izuku, unaware that he was being watched, continued to fight, resisting the figure's temptations. He knew that the battle wouldn't end anytime soon, but he also knew that he couldn't give up. The peace he so desperately sought lay beyond this fight, and he was determined to find it. Finally, after what seemed like hours of fighting, Izuku woke up with a start. His body was covered in cold sweat, and his heart was pounding in his chest. He knew the internal battle would continue, but he also knew that he wasn't alone in this fight. I can't give up. I can't give in to those temptations. I have to keep going for myself, for my friends, for everyone who believes in me. With that thought in mind, Izuku laid back down on the bed, trying to calm his mind so he could rest. He knew the next day would be another challenge, but he also knew that with the help of his friends, he would find the strength to keep going. Voices in the dark. The fourth day of preparation for the cultural festival arrived with an air of pent-up tension. Class 1A had made significant progress in their performance, but everyone knew that the real challenge was still ahead. The students' emotions were a mix of anticipation, exhaustion, and determination. Izuku Midoriya woke up early, feeling the weight of the previous night still on his shoulders. The dark dreams and internal battles with the mysterious figure in his mind had left him exhausted, but also more determined. He knew he had to keep going, not just for himself, but for everyone who was counting on him. After a quick shower, Izuku got dressed and headed to the dining hall. As he walked through the halls, his thoughts were divided between the upcoming rehearsal session and the strange feeling that something inside him was changing, something he couldn't quite understand. Entering the dining hall, Izuku noticed his classmates gathered in different groups, excitedly discussing plans for the festival. However, his attention was immediately drawn to Kyokujiro, who was sitting alone in a corner, looking through some sheet music. There was intense concentration in her expression, and although it was evident that she was tired, her determination shone through clearly. Izuku took a tray with his breakfast and approached Kyoka, who looked up and gave him a small smile when she saw him. "Good morning, Midoriya. How are you today?" "Good morning, Jiro. I'm surviving, I guess. How about you? Looks like you've been working non-stop." "I've been focusing on improving a few things for today's rehearsal. I know we're all exhausted, but I think we're starting to find our groove." Izuku nodded as he took a seat across from her. There was something comforting about the routine they had established, a sense of normalcy amidst all the chaos. Kyoka was someone he could rely on, and although their relationship was still in its early stages, he felt like there was a genuine connection between them. "That's true. We're getting better every day. But I've been thinking about what you said yesterday about conveying our emotions through music. It's harder than it seems, especially when there's so much on my mind." Kyoka put the sheet music aside and leaned slightly towards him, showing interest in his words. "Do you want to talk about it? I know we're all dealing with a lot, but if there's anything I can do to help." Izuku hesitated for a moment. Talking about his problems wasn't something he did easily, especially when his inner struggles seemed so complex and dark. But there was something about Kyoka's calm presence that encouraged him to open up a little more. "Lately, I've been having nightmares actually. There's something or someone in my mind that's tormenting me, offering me power in exchange for surrendering to it. I don't know exactly what it is, but I feel like it's getting stronger every day." Kyoka looked at him seriously, feeling the gravity of his words. Although she didn't know exactly what he meant, she understood what it was like to fight against something inside, something that can't be seen but can be felt with every fiber of the body. "That sounds scary, Midoriya. But the important thing is that you're not facing this alone. You have everyone here, including me, to support you. You don't have to carry this on your own." Izuku felt an unexpected relief upon hearing those words. He had been so focused on his own struggles that he had forgotten that he was not alone in this battle. Although the mysterious figure still lurked in his mind, knowing that he had friends willing to support him gave him new strength. "Thank you, Jiro. It really means a lot to me to know that you're here. I don't know what I would do without you." "You don't have to thank me. We are classmates, but more than that, we are friends. And friends are there to support each other, especially in times like this." The conversation faded into a comfortable silence as the two continued with their breakfast. There was something comforting about Kyoka's company, something that made Izuku's problems seem a little more manageable. After finishing eating, they headed together to the music room, where the other members of the class were already beginning to gather for rehearsal. The energy in the room was one of anticipation, with all the students focused on giving their best. Kyoka, as usual, took the lead and began organizing her fellow members, adjusting microphones, tuning instruments, and making sure everyone was ready to go. Izuku, meanwhile, took care of the technical details, making sure the sound was perfect. The rehearsal began with renewed energy. Despite the accumulated fatigue, everyone was determined to make the band sound better than the day before. There were mistakes, of course, but there was also a growing sense of unity among the students. Each one was giving their best, not only for the festival, but because of the mutual support they felt for each other. As the music filled the classroom, Izuku couldn't help but get lost in his thoughts. The conversation with Kyoka had awakened something within him, a desire to fight not only his external enemies, but also the shadows that threatened to consume him from within. I can't let these shadows control me. I have to find a way to overcome them, to move forward, for the sake of all those who count on me. The rehearsal continued throughout the morning, and while there were moments of frustration, there were also moments of clarity and connection. Kyoka, watching her teammates, felt a spark of hope. Despite everything they had been through, they were accomplishing something special, something that reflected the strength of their unit. We are improving, guys. It's not just a question of technique, it's a question of heart. I want us to continue focusing on that, on transmitting what we feel through music. This festival is our way of showing the world that, despite everything, we are still standing. Kyoka's words resonated with everyone, and the students, though tired, felt inspired to press on. Izuku, watching the determination in his classmates' eyes, felt the darkness inside him begin to fade, at least for the moment. Rehearsal ended at noon, and Kyoka decided to give them a break. While the students dispersed to relax, Izuku stayed a moment longer in the classroom, reflecting on what he had learned that day. Later, as night came, Izuku prepared to sleep, knowing that the shadows in his mind would return. But this time, he felt more prepared. He knew that the internal struggle wouldn't end anytime soon, but he also knew that he wasn't alone. And sure enough, as Izuku closed his eyes, the shadows returned. This time, the mysterious figure was clearer, more defined, as if it was gaining power as Izuku resisted. You can't escape me, Midoriya. I'm a part of you, and I always will be. I don't need your power. I have something much stronger. I have my friends, and I won't give up. As usual, he wasn't alone in his mind. In the distance, in the dim light, shadows watched silently, analyzing Izuku's every move. Izuku, aware that the battle was far from over, prepared himself for what was to come. He knew he had to keep going, not just for himself, but for everyone who believed in him. And with that determination, he dove into the internal struggle, knowing that in the end, the light would always prevail over the darkness. Echoes of the past and omens of the future. The internal battle in Izuku's mind continued unabated. The mysterious figure that had haunted him for nights seemed to gain strength with every blow, with every word. Darkness enveloped his subconscious, blurring the boundaries between reality and the deepest fear he carried within. Izuku found himself in an infinite space, where there was no horizon, only a void that absorbed all light. In front of him, the dark figure advanced, each step resonating in his mind like an endless echo. Although he could not see its face clearly, he felt the weight of a presence that did not belong to this world, something that should not exist in his mind. Midoriya, how much longer do you think you can hold out? With each passing day, you become weaker. You can't fight the inevitable. I'm not going to give in. I don't need your power. I can go on without you. Izuku's words echoed with a determination that, though firm, was weakened by fatigue. The dark figure smiled, a smirk that could not be seen but was felt in every corner of the darkness. He raised a hand, and threads of shadow emerged from it, and wrapped themselves around Izuku, trying to imprison him. Your endurance is admirable, but futile. Look around you, Midoriya. You are alone, trapped in a sea of darkness. You cannot escape, not without my help. Izuku struggled against the threads, but the harder he tried, the tighter they tightened, immobilizing him. He felt like he was losing his breath, his hope fading away. But at that moment, something inside him began to shine, a small ray of light that refused to be extinguished. No, I'm not alone. I have friends, I have people who believe in me. I can't let this darkness consume me. The light inside Izuku began to grow, emanating from his chest and spreading through the threads imprisoning him. The dark figure stepped back slightly, surprised by the resistance Izuku was showing. Are you still clinging to that useless hope? It's just a spark in the middle of an abyss. You can't win. I may not be able to, but I'm not going to give up. I can't afford to lose. With a cry of effort, Izuku released a wave of energy from his body, breaking through the threads of shadow that bound him. The light expanded, illuminating the void around him and causing the dark figure to fade into the shadows. But even as the figure dissipated, a sense of unease lingered in the air. Izuku knew that this victory was only temporary, that the darkness wasn't gone, it had only receded, waiting for its moment to strike again. As the light in his mind began to fade, Izuku heard voices in the distance, like whispers echoing in the dim light. They weren't threatening, but they weren't friendly either. They were observant. Shadow 1 calm voice, interesting, the ninth bearer is stronger than we thought. Shadow 2 deep voice, if he manages to pass this test, it will be time to talk to him. We can't wait any longer. Shadow 3 female voice, he must be ready. The future of everything we know could depend on him. The shadows watched from a distance, like silent judges. Though they did not come closer, their presence was undeniable, and their purpose unknown. Izuku, though exhausted, realized that this fight was not his alone. There was something greater at stake, something he did not yet fully understand. Who are you? What do you want from me? Shadow 1, all in good time, young Midoriya. For now, you must only focus on keeping the darkness at bay. You are not ready for what is to come, but you will be. And when that time comes, we will be here. The voices faded along with the shadows, leaving Izuku alone in the fading light of his mind. Still breathing heavily, he knew he hadn't really won, he just managed to hold his ground a little longer. But that was enough for now. When Izuku opened his eyes, he found himself in his bedroom, covered in sweat and breathing heavily. Morning was just beginning to break, and the first rays of sunlight were timidly filtering through the curtains. Although tired, he felt more focused than he had in previous days. He knew that the internal battles would continue, but he also knew that there was something else at stake, something that drove him to keep going. I can't stop now. No matter how many times I fall, I will get up. Not just for myself, but for everyone who needs me, he said in a low voice. With renewed determination, Izuku got out of bed and headed to the bathroom to prepare for the day ahead. He knew that the cultural festival was still a priority, but he also knew that he needed to be prepared for whatever these shadows were planning. After a quick shower, he dressed in his UA uniform and headed to the communal kitchen to prepare a light breakfast. At this hour, most of his classmates were still sleeping, taking advantage of the extra minutes of rest before facing another day of rehearsals and preparation. As Izuku poured himself a cup of tea, he couldn't help but let his thoughts wander back to Kyoka and the conversation they'd had the day before. There was something about her that made him feel more at peace, as if her mere presence reminded him that not everything was lost, that there were still reasons to fight. Kyoka, she's been an incredible support these days. I don't know how she does it, but she always finds a way to calm my fears, to make me feel like I'm not alone. With that thought in mind, Izuku finished his breakfast and headed to the music classroom, where he knew Kyoka would probably already be setting up everything for the day's rehearsal. Although it was early, he wasn't surprised to find her already busy with the microphones and sheet music. Good morning, Jiro. How are you today? Good morning, Midoriya. I'm fine, just adjusting a few things before the others arrive. How about you? How are you feeling? I feel better, I think. I still have a lot to think about, but our conversations have helped me a lot. Thanks for being there. Kyoka smiled, though her gaze revealed a weariness she couldn't hide. Despite everything, there was something in her eyes that reflected an unwavering determination, a strength that Izuku found admirable. I'm glad to know I can help you, Midoriya. We're all going through tough times, but I think as long as we're together, we can get through it. The rest of the students began arriving soon after, and the music room was soon filled with the familiar activity of preparing for rehearsal. The energy in the air was a mix of anticipation and exhaustion, but also a deep camaraderie that had grown stronger over time. Kyoka, as always, took the lead and began directing her fellow students, making sure everything was in order before they began. Although they were all tired, there was a spark of enthusiasm in each of them, a shared determination to make their performance at the cultural festival a success. The rehearsal began with renewed energy. The music, though not yet perfect, was beginning to flow with a naturalness that could only come from constant practice and shared passion. Izuku, watching his fellow students, felt a warm satisfaction at seeing how everyone was working together to achieve a common goal. However, as the music filled the classroom, Izuku couldn't help but let his mind wander back to the shadows that haunted him every night. He knew the mysterious figure was still there, waiting for the right moment to strike again. But he also knew he couldn't allow himself to fall into despair. I can't let that darkness control me. I have to find a way to overcome it, to move forward. Rehearsal continued throughout the morning, and although there were a few mistakes, the band began to find their rhythm. Kyoka, always attentive, corrected her fellow members when necessary, but also encouraged them to do their best. We're getting better every day, guys. Remember, music isn't just about playing the right notes, it's about conveying what we feel. I want us to keep focusing on that, on making our music speak for us. After several hours of rehearsing, Kyoka decided to give them a break. The students scattered around the classroom, some stretching, others checking their scores. Izuku, however, decided to stay close to Kyoka, feeling like there was still something he needed to say. Jiro, I've been thinking about what you told me yesterday, about how I don't have to face this alone. And you're right. But there's something else I want to share with you. Kyoka looked at him carefully, knowing that what he was about to say was important. Last night, I had that nightmare again, that internal struggle. But this time it was different. I felt like there were other presences, like they were watching me. I don't know what it means, but I have the feeling that something is about to happen. That sounds disturbing, Midoriya. But the important thing is that you keep fighting, that you don't let yourself be defeated by those shadows. Whatever comes, I know that you will face it with the same determination that you have always shown. Izuku nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He knew Kyoka was right, that he couldn't let fear paralyze him. But he also knew that he had to be prepared for whatever was coming. Thank you, Jiro. I don't know what I would do without your support. I promise I will keep fighting, not just for myself, but for all of you. The conversation faded into a comfortable silence as the two prepared to continue with the rehearsal. However, there was something different in the air, a sense that, despite everything, they were moving in the right direction. The rest of the day passed without incident, with the students focused on perfecting their music and making sure everything was ready for the festival. Although fatigue was evident, Class 1A's determination shone brightly. Preparations and revelations. The next morning began with the same routine as the previous days, but something in the air was different. The cultural festival was quickly approaching, and the pressure to do something memorable was beginning to be felt by each of the students of Class 1A. Despite Izuku's concern about the shadows that haunted him, he decided to focus on the preparations, seeking to find some peace in the camaraderie of his classmates. Izuku woke up early, as usual, and headed to the communal kitchen to eat breakfast. As he prepared his meal, he noticed that Kyoka was already there, looking over some musical notes, with a focused expression. Although there was a tense atmosphere in the air, there was also a sense of anticipation, as if everyone was waiting for something big to happen. Good morning, Jiro. Ready for another day of rehearsals? Good morning, Midoriya. I'm always ready. Although, with the festival so close, I can't help but feel a little nervous, she replied with a light smile. Nerves, I guess we're all feeling them in some way. The freckled man thought empathetically. The day began with students gathering in the music room. Conversations revolved around the final adjustments that needed to be made for the performance, the costumes, the choreography, and of course, the music. As the hours passed, the atmosphere became more charged, but also more focused. Throughout the day, Izuku noticed that Kyoka seemed to carry the burden of leadership with a quiet grace. Though her expression was often serious, there were times when a warm smile would appear on her face, especially when her companions managed to overcome an obstacle or fine-tune a difficult part of the song. Jiro is really amazing. She has taken on this responsibility so naturally. I wonder if she is also dealing with her own fears, like me. In the middle of one of the breaks, Izuku decided to approach her, feeling like there was something he needed to tell her. He found her looking through some sheet music in a corner of the classroom, her expression focused and her brow slightly furrowed. Jiro, I've been thinking about how you've handled all of this, the leadership of the band, the coordination with all of us. It's really impressive. Thank you, Midoriya. It's not easy, but someone had to do it. Besides, we're all doing our part, including you. Without your support, this would be much harder. With a surprised look. Izuku smiled, but his mind was returning to his own challenges. He knew he couldn't continue to ignore what was going on inside him, but he didn't want to burden Kyoka with his problems either. Before he could say anything else, however, the classroom door opened, and Aizawa entered with his characteristic serious expression. Okay, class. I've come to brief you on some of the logistical details of the festival. While I want you to know that I'm aware of the effort you're putting in, I also want to remind you that you must be prepared for any contingency. This festival is an opportunity to show what you've learned, but you must not forget that safety remains our priority. Aizawa's words fell like a reminder of the reality outside the walls of UA. Although the cultural festival was a joyous event, the outside world was still dangerous, and each of them had to be ready for the unexpected. After Aizawa's brief talk, the class returned to focusing on rehearsals. As the music filled the classroom, Izuku felt a mix of emotions. He was excited for the festival, but there was also a growing uneasiness in his chest, a feeling that something big was about to happen. The day progressed quickly, and before they knew it, the sun began to set, turning the sky into shades of orange and pink. Kyoka decided to end the rehearsal, allowing everyone to get some rest before the big performance. Good job today, guys. Tomorrow is going to be an important day, so make sure you get a good rest. We'll meet back here early for the final adjustments. As everyone began to gather their things, Izuku felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned around to find Iida, who was looking at him with a mix of concern and determination. Midoriya, can I talk to you for a moment? Tenya asked. Sure, Iida. What's wrong? The two of them stepped away from the hustle and bustle of the classroom and headed to a quieter corner of the hallway. Iida seemed to be searching for the right words, as if what he had to say was of great importance. Midoriya, I know you've been dealing with a lot lately. And I also know that it's not always easy to talk about what we feel. But I want you to know that I'm here for you, like you were for me when I was dealing with my brother. Iida, that was different. You were in a really difficult situation. I know, but what I mean is that you helped me see things from a different perspective, you helped me not fall into darkness. And I want to do the same for you. I know you've been distant, especially with Uraraka, and I know that something happened between you two. It's complicated, Iida. There are things that I can't explain. But I promise you that I'm trying to handle them. With his gaze towards the ground. Iida nodded, understanding that there were limits to what Izuku was willing to share. However, before they could continue speaking, they were interrupted by Kirishima, Todoroki, and Momo, who approached with serious expressions. Midoriya, we also want to talk to you. We know you've been going through a bad time, and we're worried. Kirishima said. You don't have to carry everything alone. We are a team, and we are here to support you in whatever you need. Shoto seconded. We understand that sometimes it is difficult to talk about what hurts us, but we want you to know that you can trust us. We don't want to see you fall. Yaoyorozu finished. Izuku looked at his friends, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. Even though the shadows still lurked, he realized that he wasn't alone. He had friends who cared about him, who were willing to stand by his side in the darkest of times. Thank you, everyone. I don't know what I would do without you. The sincerity in Izuku's voice rang through the air, and for a moment, the group fell silent, sharing an unspoken understanding of the importance of friendship and mutual support. The conversation soon drifted to lighter topics, but the connection that had formed between them remained. That night, as Izuku prepared for bed, he couldn't help but reflect on what had happened during the day. He knew that the road ahead was full of challenges, But with friends like his, he felt like he could face them with more strength and determination. As sleep engulfed him, however, the shadows appeared in his mind again, fainter this time, but still present. He knew that the internal struggle was not over, but he also knew that, with the support of his friends and his own willpower, he was ready for whatever the future held. No matter what comes. As long as I have my friends and my determination, I will keep going. I will not give up. End of chapter.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.